Hello, everyone. Thanks for listening to Wake Up, Look Up, a podcast where we connect events happening in real time to the gospel of Jesus Christ. I'm Zach Wyrock. And in today's episode, we're asking the question, who will visit the lonely? This is prompted by an article I read this week called My Dying Father Helped Me to See the Value of Daytime TV. It was a fascinating article. The journalist was talking about how he shared the opinion most of us share about daytime television. It is the lowest form of content on television. It's talk shows and soap operas and courtroom TV and cooking shows with a very low budget. It's all this television that seemingly just passes time. And it's the kind of TV that might be on when you take your car in to get your oil changed, or you're in a hospital waiting room and you're wondering, who is watching this stuff? At least that's what the journalist was wondering in a kind of a condescending way at the beginning of the article. But he talked about sitting with his father, who spent an extended stay in the hospital before passing away, and how his dad over time became obsessed with daytime television because he spent so much time in the hospital alone. The daytime television became an indication of his father's isolation. It became a window to the larger world. It became the one outlet he had to interact with other people. And the journalist does a great job of explaining how over time it became the way he connected with his father, who increasingly couldn't really communicate. They would share their love for that low-budget cooking show or raised eyebrows at that courtroom drama. It was an interesting connection he was making between daytime television and the increasing loneliness of people in our world, people who live alone, people who are elderly and sick. And it made me think that, part of what it means to follow Jesus, I think, is to see lonely people as our responsibility. When James 1 tells us that pure and undefiled religion is that we think and take care of widows and orphans, he's putting his finger on two groups of people who, by definition, are alone. Children who don't have their families, adults who have lost their spouse. And I don't think he's being exclusive. As long as we care for those two groups, that's all that matters. He's talking about lonely and isolated people, the kind of people who probably by necessity fill their days with daytime television. But TV, especially daytime TV, is a poor substitute for actual human interaction. It's a poor substitute for being a part of the lives of other people and having other people be a part of your life. I couldn't help but think of Matthew 25, when Jesus talks about the day of judgment and separating all people into the sheep and the goats. And kind of the defining characteristic of the sheep, God's people, those who enter into heaven, is that they practice the ministry of presence. They were with those in jail. They were with those who were sick, with the poor, with those who were in need, with those who were so often forgotten, with those who were alone. And what's interesting is the passage really isn't about transformation. They weren't prison reformers or social reformers. I don't mean that those things are bad. I just mean that what Jesus is saying is you actually cared about, spent time with, saw the value of people you might otherwise have forgotten. I wonder if Jesus were writing today, or speaking today, if he wouldn't say, when I was in prison, when I was sick, when I was in assisted living, when I was in hospice, when you knew I lived on my own and hadn't had anyone over in a while. I can't help but think at my dining room table, I have a big family, 5 kids, my wife and I, 7 people, but we have 8 dining room chairs. I can't help but think that what Jesus is saying in Matthew 25 is that one indication that I'm a sheep and not a goat is that I'm looking to fill that chair. This guy's dad was dying and alone, and all he had was Judge Judy. And I feel like that's an indictment on the church. We should be the people who are thinking of the lonely, thinking of those that are forgotten. We should be their window to the larger world. First of all, because they're made in the image of God and they matter. Second, because it might be that that's the first time in their lives they're actually open to hearing the gospel, that the life of busyness is gone. The life of social activity is gone. All they have is their bed and daytime television and maybe someone who's there hoping to tell them about the gospel. I think of an elderly couple that I met with at my church recently who actually in retirement spend one day a week sitting with people in hospice who are dying. It's amazing, just practicing the ministry of presence. So here's my hope in hearing this podcast and in reflecting on this article, that you will be thinking of one lonely person, one group of lonely people that God might be calling you to practice the ministry of presence with and towards. Don't delay, because the question, who will visit the lonely? The answer should be Jesus through the presence of his people. Hey, thanks so much for watching this episode of Wake Up, Look Up. While you're here, take a minute to like and subscribe. Really helps us get the word out. Don't hesitate to leave a review wherever you might find this podcast on an audio level and help spread the word. And hey, while you're here, check out all the other content we have at Christ Community Chapel on YouTube. Some of those videos are popping up on the screen now. Click on one.